you are trying to find your x-intercepts and they haven't given you the picture, and you've got that equation, the equation doesn't factor, which we've seen before, right? Sometimes it gets down to we've taken out the GCF, but there's nothing that multiplies to give us that product and adds to give us the sum. So we just have to write does not factor and then leave it at pulling out the GCF. Okay? But that would not get us any real solutions. So if that happens, you have to use the quadratic formula. They give us this example here. This is an example. We know that negative 12, there's a couple things that can multiply to give me negative 12, but nothing that will also add to give me a positive 7, right? 3 times 4 is 12, but one of them would have to be negative, and if you make one of them negative, they no longer add to give you a positive 7, okay? So this is when we would need to use the quadratic formula. They point out to us that this means your x-intercepts are not going to necessarily be pretty numbers or integers. You're going to get some decimals, all right? Now, this is the formula you're going to use. You still need to always take the first step of setting your equation equal to 0, just like they have it written here. So, same as before, everything's got to be on one side of the equation. You're going to have some term first with the x squared. In the middle, you should have your term with x, and then your third term should be your constant, the one that doesn't have any variables with it. Okay? And in this formula over here, your a is whatever is in front of x squared, your b is whatever is in front of x, and your c is the constant here on the end. And then we just plug it into this formula right here. Okay? So let's give it a try. Looking here at number 1, I first need to identify what my a, b, and c are. Okay? So a is supposed to be the term with x squared, b the term with 7x, and c the constant. Okay? It's supposed to be the number in front of those things. Well, is there a number in front of x squared? It's going to be an understood 1. Very good. What about in front of our b term?
7.
Good. And what's our constant, c? Negative 12. Very good. Okay, so now I know what my a, b, and c are. I'm going to plug them in or substitute them into this formula right here. Okay? There should not be any x's in this formula, only numbers. Okay? So it says x is equal to negative b. Well, what's our b? 7. So we should have negative, I'm going to put my 7 in parentheses there. Okay, the next thing in the formula is plus or minus. So we need 2 solutions. Whenever you take the square root of something, you have no way of knowing if it was a positive or negative. So you have to put plus and minus down. Okay? And then you have this really big square root, and underneath it, you're going to have b squared. Well, what did we say b was? So we have 7 squared minus 4 times a. What did we say a was? Good. Times c. And what did we say c was? Good. And all of this, the whole thing, even the negative and the 7 from out in front, is all divided by 2 times a. And again, what did we say a was? Good. Okay. Now, in classes in the past, you may have been able to just go ahead and type it in the calculator just like it is right now, but we're not going to do that because we are preparing for the next step, which is in Algebra 2, where you could get some negatives under here, and your calculator is just going to tell you it's an error. Okay? So, in Algebra 2, we need to know how to simplify this part underneath here ourselves. Now, that doesn't mean you can't use the calculator to do that part. You just can't type it all in at once. Okay? So what we need to do first is simplify all this mess that we have underneath our radical. Okay? So what I'm going to do is in my calculator, I'm going to type the stuff underneath the radical. Okay? So only the stuff underneath it. So for us, that's 7 squared. So I type in parentheses, put your 7. Make sure you put that number in parentheses, squared. Okay, the next thing was minus 4 times 1. So I'll have minus 4 parentheses 1. And then after the 1 in parentheses, we had a, right, so I'll put negative 12. Okay. That much you can put in your calculator and it will simplify for you. Okay?
Wait, wasn't that 7?
No, negative 4 times 1 times negative 12.
Isn't it B 7, right?
4, 8, 7.
Oh.
Okay? So we had our 7 squared minus 4 times 1 times negative 12. Has everybody typed that part in?
Yep.
I have confused looks. Can we get something different? No?
I
Everybody
checked
got the
if I
same
did
thing?
something wrong.
Okay.
You got it. Hold on.
So you should have a 7 in parentheses with a square minus 4. And then in parentheses, we have our A, which was 1. And the next parenthesis is a negative 12. Everybody got it?
Okay, I did it twice.
Okay. All right. Okay. So in front, we had negative 7, right? So that's still there. And then we still have this plus or minus the square root of all of this is what we typed in our calculator, and it became 97. So now we just have square root of 97 over 2 times 1. Right. Okay. Now, because I did not get a negative number here, at this point, you can go ahead and type the answer in your calculator. If you're in Algebra 2, you will then have to simplify this part, but we haven't gotten there just yet. Okay. So now that I know this is not negative, I'm good to go. Okay. The problem is there is no button on your calculator that says plus or minus, right? So you have to do them individually. You're going to do a negative 7 plus square root of 97 over 2. And you're also going to type in negative 7 minus square root of 97 all over 2. Okay? You're going to have to do both of them. All right? So, in order to make sure that you aren't adding or dividing at the wrong time, you want to type this in your calculator exactly as it's written here. Okay? So remember, to make that fraction, we're going to hit the alpha y equals and press enter. And then it lets me type in the top and the bottom. So alpha y equals enter. So now in the top, I've got negative 7. I'm going to do my plus first. So negative 7 plus the square root. To do a square root, you press second and then the x squared and put your 97. And then arrow to the bottom and put in your 2. Okay? And this is what we get. All right, this long decimal here. All right, we're just going to go one decimal place for today. So we're just going to write down 1.4 for our first solution. Okay, so first I get x equals 1.4. But now I also need to type this one in my calculator. Okay? So I got alpha y equals enter, negative 7, this time minus the square root of 97 all over 2. And this time I get negative 8.4244 and so on, right? Just go one decimal place. Okay. So, and negative 8.4. So these are my 2 solutions. Okay? Well, it wouldn't normally take 10 minutes, but I had to do a lot of explaining. All right, so let's do another one. Okay, on number 2, what's my A gonna be?
-2.
-2. What's my B?
4.
-4. And what's my C?
3.
Very good. Alright, now we take that and substitute it into the formula. So the formula is -B. Well, what's our B?
3.
Okay, so I've got -4 plus or minus the square root of B squared. What's B?
-4.
So again, make sure you put that in parentheses. -4 squared minus 4 times A. What's A?
-2.
Times C. And what's C?
3.
Good. And then all of this is divided by 2 times A. And we said A was -2. Okay. So we have it plugged in. Remember, the first thing we need to do is simplify what's underneath here. So I go type just that part in my calculator. Okay. So I'm going to have in parentheses -4 squared minus 4 times A, which we said was -2, times C, which we said was 3, right? Yes, okay. So that simplifies to 40, okay? So, now looking at my problem, out here in front, I had -4, right? Well, 2 negatives make it a,
Positive.
okay, so I've got 4 plus or minus, okay, the square root of, when we typed all this in our calculator, what did it become? 40. All over 2 times -2. Well, what is 2 times -2? -4. All right. Okay, so again, remember our calculator doesn't have a plus or minus button, so I'm going to do -4 plus square root of 40 over -4, and then I'll also have to do 4 minus square root of 40 all over -4. Okay, so in my calculator, I've got alpha y equals enter. In the top, 4 plus the square root of 40 over -4. And this is what we get. Okay. Round 1 decimal place, so this would become -2.6. So x equals -2.6. Okay, and then the same for the other one down here. Okay, just this time we use the minus. So alpha y equals enter for minus the square root of 40 all over -4. We get 0.5811, so on. Okay, so again, if we're just going 1 decimal place, that's going to round to 0.6. And 0.6. All right. All right, flip it over onto the back, and we're going to do a couple more together. Okay, number 3. Is everything on one side of the equal sign?
No.
No, so what do I need to do first? Very good. So now I'll have 6x squared minus 3x minus 7 equals 0. And now we know this is our A, B, and C. All right. Okay, so my A is what number? And my B is and my C is -7. Okay. All right, now we substitute it into the formula. Okay, the formula from the front was -b. So I have -b, and what's our b? So I got -3 plus or minus the square root of b squared. What was our b again? So I got -3 squared minus 4 times a. What's a? Times c, which is nice. And this is all over 2 times a, and we said a was good. Okay, now I type what's underneath here in my calculator to simplify it. Okay, so I've got -3 squared minus 4 parentheses a, and our a was 6, parentheses c, which is -7. Okay, and we get 177. Okay. All right. Huh?
Other times I did it,
Oh, you just probably mistyped something. No big deal. All right, so right here, we got -3. 2 negatives make a, so I got +3 plus or minus the square root of, what did we say it became?
177.
All over 2 times 6, which is
12.
good. Okay, and then remember we do 1 for the plus, 1 for the minus. So I'm going to have 3 plus square root of 177 over 12. And then I'm also going to do 3 minus square root of 177 over 12. Okay. So, we've got alpha y equals, enter. 3, oops. There it goes. 3 plus the square root of 177 over 12. And then I also am going to do, don't freeze on me. Well, calculator froze. I'll go ahead and write down my first answer. So that would be 1.4. Okay. And then, well, okay, well, my calculator's frozen. So did somebody else already do the 3 minus square root of 177? -0.9 is what I'll got. Okay. All right. Okay, last one where we have to do the whole thing. Okay. All right, so what should I do first on number 4? All right, so we're going to have to move the 3x over. So I'll have x squared minus 3x plus 2 equals 0. Remember, the term that has the x goes in the middle, so that's why we put the -3 in the middle. Okay. All right, so what's my a? Good. What's my b? Nice. And what's my c? Good. All right, so plug it into the equation. So the formula is negative b, so -3 for us, right? Plus or minus the square root of b squared. What's our b? Okay, make sure that you put -3 in parentheses with a square on the outside. If you don't do that when you type it in your calculator, it's going to give you the wrong answer, okay? Minus 4 times a, what's a? times c, which is good, all divided by 2 times, nice. Okay, so underneath my radical, I've got -3 squared. Make sure you put the -3 in parentheses and the square outside, minus 4 parentheses 1 parentheses 2. And what do we get? 1. Very good. Okay, so I got -3, which becomes plus or minus the square root of 1 all over 2. Well, there actually is a square root of 1, right? The square root of 1 is just 1. So this time we should get better numbers, okay? All right, so we've got 3 plus square root of 1 over 2 and 3 minus square root of 1 over 2. So this is really 3 plus 1, which is 4. 4 divided by 2 is 2. Okay. And again, you can still type these in your calculator if you want, but since this is a whole number, this is basically 3 minus 1, which is 2. 2 divided by 2 is going to give us 1. And there's our solutions. All right, and then the very last one, they actually don't want us to solve it all the way. They just want to know which one of these is set up correctly. Okay, so we're just doing the first part, the setup. Okay, well, before I can plug anything in, I got to rearrange here. What do I need to do? Add 1, very good. So x squared minus 4x plus 1 equals 0. Okay, well, what are my A, B, and C for this equation? Very good. All right, so I'm going to plug those in to the equation. Okay, the formula is -b. What's our b? So I've got -4 plus or minus the square root of b squared. So for us, that'll be -4 squared minus 4 times a. What's a? And c? All over 2 times a, which we said was 1. Okay, so I need to simplify what's underneath here first. So I got -4 squared minus 4 times 1 times 1. So what's that going to give me? If I type this part in my calculator, what do I get?
4 plus 12.
This part becomes 12. Yes, very good. All right, so I've got in front -4, which becomes +4, plus or minus, like you guys said underneath here, all became 12 over 2 times 1, which is 2. Okay, so which one of these answers is correct? Very good. All right.